Hi, my name is Jessica Ziegler, and I am a recent alum of the Institute for Policy Studies program at Johns Hopkins University. I just graduated a few short weeks ago with the class of 2008, and I was asked to talk to prospective and current students a little bit about my recent alumni perspective on my experience in the Masters of Public Policy program. So first, a little background information. Prior to applying to and coming to Johns Hopkins, I was working as a case manager in a welfare office in Philadelphia. I was working with welfare recipients on a number of things like obtaining and retaining employment, securing housing, transportation, childcare, the list goes on. And kind of as I was working as a social worker, I was becoming increasingly frustrated with the rules that governed the job that I was doing every day. I was frustrated with kind of the laws that dictated welfare policy and social policy and kind of the way things were funded and things like that. And as my frustrations grew, I started to look into ways that I could perhaps be part of a solution, part of reform efforts and things like that. And that's when I began investigating Masters in Public Policy programs and found Johns Hopkins University. One of the primary reasons as an individual who's interested in social policy, one of the primary reasons I came to the Institute for Policy Studies was Demetra Nightingale. She's done masses and masses of work with welfare reform and social policy and teaches a number of courses in the MPP program. She's one of the leaders and is very well known in the field and works at the Urban Institute in Washington, D.C. And I knew she would be such a valuable resource, and I wanted to pick her brain, so she was one of the main reasons that I decided to enter the program. So, kind of looking back on my IPS experience, I was trying to think of things that I got from the program that might not be as obvious when you're applying to public policy programs or deciding where to get your degree. Other than technical skills and substantive knowledge, what did I walk away from the program with? And three main things come to mind. The first being a new approach to perspective and objectivity. When I entered the MPP program, I considered myself an extremely objective individual. I thought I had a great perspective on welfare and other social policy issues. But what I quickly learned when I stepped into a classroom with 34 individuals from completely different backgrounds, different professional and educational histories, that my perspective was actually quite limited and that I wasn't necessarily as objective as I thought I was. So kind of day in and day out over my 2 years at the MPP program, I was reminded of the experiences of my classmates that were so diverse and interesting and valuable to me in my study, and really kept accountable in class discussions by both professors and my classmates with regard to ideas I was proposing or kind of solutions I was coming up with. So the first major takeaway from the program that I didn't expect to have is kind of this new approach to perspective and objectivity with regard to being accountable in conversations now with my public policy colleagues outside of the MPP program that I think makes me a much stronger public policy professional. The second, and I can't remember what the second was. What did I say last time? The third was access. What was the second? Oh, okay. The second major takeaway from the MPP program that I was not expecting is this new interest in a wealth of public policy areas outside of welfare policy and social policy. One of the main things that I think prospective students should know about the MPP program is that it's a master's in public policy program. It's not a master's in education policy, not a master's in social policy or health policy, international policy, anything like that. It's a public policy program. So coming in as a social policy analyst and as someone who is interested in welfare reform, I was forced to look at my issue and my interest area from all of these other policy lenses. And what I mean by that is I was forced to look at and understand and become knowledgeable in health policy as it related to my welfare population, or housing policy, education policy as it related to the people that I was interested in serving. And so as my 2 years progressed, I found myself not only taking all of the social policy courses that were offered, but also taking education policy classes with Professor Balfans and Marion Pines, and also taking juvenile justice classes with Professor Altschuler. Taking a number of classes in a number of substantive areas, I think has made me attractive to prospective employers who, while I was pursuing jobs in social policy analysis and research and with a concentration in welfare, they've been very interested and excited by the fact that I do have this substantive knowledge in all of these other areas, and it only makes me stronger in the area that I hope to pursue in the future. And kind of my third main takeaway is that I know when a lot of students look for public policy schools, they think that being as close to DC or in DC is extremely important, and that you, by leaving DC and studying someplace like Baltimore, that you kind of lose that connection to what's going on inside the Beltway. I would have to say probably the exact opposite has been true of my experience. Coming to Hopkins, I learned very quickly that most, if not all, of my professors did extensive work in DC and among the DC network, or were currently working in DC and had a number of connections in nonprofit sector, private sector, public sector, with elected officials and so on. And also kind of that the program is situated outside of DC, it's been wonderful to have an alumni network and a faculty and staff network in the Baltimore area, in the New York area, kind of all over the country, so that public policy graduates from the MPP program, while many do of course gravitate towards DC and its public policy industry, many are located around the country, and I think perhaps even around the world. And that was something that was valuable to me. I wanted to make sure I was close to DC and connected to DC, but also kind of had options to do and practice public policy wherever I may want to go. And I don't think I've been shortchanged as far as developing a DC network is concerned. So those would be my three main takeaways from the MPP program. I'm about to embark on my post-MPP adventure as a policy analyst with Mathematica, public policy research firm in Princeton, New Jersey, where I'll be working on social policy issues, both welfare policy and education policy, and I'm very excited to get started.